Hello and welcome to your instructional video on how to write your own 10 things essay based on our model essay by Jason Reynolds. So the first thing you're going to need to do before I walk you through how to write your own is to read Reynolds' example. So if you haven't already, go ahead and pause this, open up his 10 things I've been meaning to say to you, which we have linked in Google Classroom, read it over, and then come back here and I'll walk you through what you're expected to do. Okay, now that you've read the essay, you'll notice that it has a very particular format that you're going to try and emulate. But you want to start by choosing an audience. So you can see that Reynolds chose a reader, meaning one of his readers, because he's a YA author. You can choose from any group. You can choose your parents, you can choose your teachers, you can choose the school board, you can choose somebody who doesn't have as much control over you, but you wish would listen to you. Like, I don't know, the media execs of Empire. Is that still a show? Is that a show that's still, I don't know. But choose whatever audience you want and then start listing the 10 things that you would like them to hear. You'll want to start with the closest thing to an introduction paragraph that this essay will have. And this seems to mostly just define who specifically you're talking to. So he already says reader, and then the next couple of sentences basically just specify, like, I'm talking to you. If you fit this description, you're who I'm talking to. The next thing is to make a list of 10 things. But as you're doing that, one thing that I'd like you to notice is that every point that he makes is a very different length. So he varies the length. Some of them are much shorter than others. And you can kind of make that decision as you go, which don't feel like they need an explanation and which do. But you also want to emulate the total length of the essay. So if yours is looking significantly shorter than his, you're probably not explaining your points as well as you could. And you want to go back and figure out which ones you can explain better or in more detail. The next thing Reynolds does, which I'd like you to at least try to do, is play around with the language. So for instance, in step 2, or point 2, he uses the phrase, except you can. So he's playing with that word that sounds the same when we say it, but it means two completely different things. And he's intentionally playing with that language. So you can make a pun, you can do something as like cheeky as this, or you can be a little bit more basic about it. You know, you don't have to break your back trying to figure out ways to be creative, but try and include some creative writing in this. Try and use language in a way that's a little bit more fun, at least for one of your points. You don't have to do it for every point, but try it in at least one. Make sure that we can tell that you've tried. So like if I read the whole essay and I don't see any playing with language, you probably haven't done a fantastic job because it didn't pop out to me. And this obviously stands out. He also ends the point with it so that it's easier to find for us. The next one happens in point 3 when he says there's a difference between being irreverent and irresponsible. And my idea here is you want to use some language that your reader may have to look up. Now, you know that we are your intended audience for grade purposes, but maybe use a phrase or a word that the audience that you define in your introduction wouldn't know. This is a great place where you could use slang that maybe I'm gonna have to look up. You know, if I don't have to look anything up that you've written in this essay, you really haven't used language in a way that requires your reader to take an extra step. So try and find something that you think I might not have access to. And like, I'll obviously be able to tell if an attempt was made. Maybe I know it because I'm just super hip, or maybe I'll, probably have to look it up because I'm older than you think. And then the last writer move that I'd like you to also attempt is where he hooks a previous point into the next point. So for instance, he brings up mothers in point 4, and then in point 5 he said, speaking of mothers, text yours. Try and put two together that you can link in a way that obviously references the previous point. And you can do that as many times as you want throughout, but at least try to do it once so that we can see an attempt was made. Now, there's also the optional do I want to have a do-over with my last point? His point 10 is kind of mushy, and then he redefines it in his second point 10 and kind of like hits a little bit harder. He even uses the phrase, let's start this one over, so that it feels much more conversational than a normal essay would. And that's very, Jason Reynolds and his style, but if you would like, you have the option of also doing a second point 10 where you rewrite your last point in a way that also connects to the previous point. Beyond that, your goal is to write a 10 things essay to an audience that you define, including 10 full points of varied length. If you have trouble or you're getting stuck on a certain point, obviously feel free to reach out to us. You know how to get a hold of us. But this will be a 2-day project. So between today and Friday, we'd like you to try and get a draft written. It is due Saturday morning. And best of luck.